Welcome to the Ohio Farm Bureau podcast. I'm Ryan Matthews. There is a lot of uncertainty for Ohio farm families right now. Margins are thin, markets and the weather are unpredictable, and input costs continue to rise. On this episode of the Ohio Farm Bureau podcast, we'll hear from Ohio State's beef, cattle, and livestock marketing field specialist on current market trends, learn about Nationwide's renewed focus on protecting cattle operations, and chat with American Farm Bureau Communications Manager on keeping the story of farmers front and center. That's all coming up after this.
At Ag Credit, our loan officers take the time to understand each operation, its needs, and offer the unique financing solutions it deserves. Whether your needs include financing for equipment, livestock, inputs, farm improvements, real estate, or your home, we've got you covered. With a company vision to inspire growth in agriculture and our rural communities, our team members aren't just lenders. They take an active role in their community and are advocates for agriculture. To apply online or find the location nearest you, visit us at agcredit.net. Ag Credit, committed to agriculture, committed to you.
Across the Buckeye State, cattle farmers are watching the markets with a mix of optimism and caution. We've seen record high prices, tighter feeder supply, and plenty of chatter whether or not it's time to hold back the herd or cash in while the market's strong. To help us make sense of it all, we're joined by Garth Ruff, beef, cattle, and livestock marketing field specialist for OSU Extension. Welcome to the podcast, Garth.
Glad to be here, Ryan.
So to start us off, you have spent the summer visiting with cattle farmers across Ohio. What's the general tone or mood you're hearing about the cattle market right now?
Yeah, we're kind of in an interesting time, not only in the beef business, but commodity ag in general. I would say when we think about talking with beef producers across the state, those conversations are a little bit more positive than, say, corn or soybeans at this point in time. With beef really being, the bright spot as we look at the major agricultural products and the prices that we're seeing really not only this fall, but the last 2 or 3 years.
Now, feeder cattle prices are remain historically high. And I saw in one of your publications that some bred females are selling near or above $3,000 at Ohio sales. What's driving those kinds of prices here at home?
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination, that idea that the rising tide raises all ships kind of thing. As feeder cattle prices get high, certainly the value of those animals just increases as well. We see in the West here recently where the feed yards are, pretty competitive on buying heifers to put on feed versus going back into the cow herd. Supply and demand. If folks have additional feed this winter, I think there is some opportunity there, to maybe retain a few extra heifers or buy a few extra bred females. If feed and water are available, of course, droughts hit different parts of the state the last 2 years differently. But there is some upside potential there. I think, looking forward for the next year or two.
I know you also often emphasize the importance of knowing your numbers or knowing your herd, whether it's cow age, cull rate, replacement needs. For listeners who may not be super familiar, can you explain why herd dynamics matter so much for both profitability and sustainability?
Yeah, we think about herd dynamics. It's knowing how many, it can be as simple as knowing how many mature cows you have, how many 2-year-olds you have, how many heifers that you need to keep in order to replace the cows that were culled in a given year. But really what all that boils down to is knowing the cost of production, right? And it's a little bit more challenging in the animal side of things to know some of those costs. If I plant an acre of corn, I know what my rent was. I know what the corn cost. I know fertilizer cost. On the animal side, it's knowing, not only the value of those animals, but trying to factor in efficiencies, right? We don't get every cow bred. Not every cow that has a calf weans a calf. There's death loss. There's differences in performance between animals within a herd and certainly from one herd to the next. So we look at all those numbers and try to help, producer get down to what is their cost of production. We're really a cow-calf state for the most part. So what does that cost to keep a cow for a year? Or, if we're on the feedlot side, looking at all the different efficiency numbers, What is my cost per pound of gain for those animals in a feedlot?
I know you already kind of hit on a winter season, and as farmers are starting to make those decisions and looking their herd dynamics. For the farmers that are thinking about expanding, but are unsure about some of those factors, including feed availability, what's your practical advice for heading into winter feeding season?
Yeah, and the conversation here recently has been, do we expand? Last year we maybe sold some cows across the state for a variety of reasons. We've had a lot of the older generation of farmers retire with small cow herds. Drought really put a hurt on things, as far as keeping extra cattle in 2024, at least east and south. I know this year it's drier north and west. Um, so it's, do we have feed? I think is the big thing, right? If we have feed to stay at a current number, if we know our call rates, um, that's one thing. If we have extra feed compared to a year ago, do I have enough feed to maybe get back to a 2023 cow herd number? And that's locally within smaller, from one operation to the next, I guess. Nationwide, um, at some point we will probably add some cow numbers, and that's a challenging thing to say when. And it probably comes down to a few factors: the feed and drought that we've kind of touched on, the cost of money, right? Interest is still relatively high, and when feeder heifers are, when bringing what they are today, 2,000, 2,500 and up kind of prices, how many heifers do you retain? Is it pay me now, pay me later? Do we invest some of that feeder cattle price into infrastructure on the farm? Try to pay down some debts, some different things. It's not a one size fits all decision from one farm to the next. A lot of factors there. Cow herd size. What is the optimum carrying capacity? Labor, additional cost.
I liked in one of your recent articles, I think you quoted the gambler, like knowing when to hold them, knowing when to fold them, and just kind of figuring out, what's best for my farm and what's best for my herd. Um, so last question here, as we're starting to look about farmers rebuilding that herd, what are some signals or market indicators that you will be watching both here in Ohio and nationwide as farmers are starting to rebuild that herd?
Yeah, the if you had a crystal ball, silver bullet kind of thing, the question that's often asked is how long is this market going to continue? Right? We've starting to see a little bit of a level off in the fed cattle market. Box beef here the last 2 3 weeks has been, some downward pressure on that. So there is a number or a price point that we're going to kind of level out to. But plateauing, I'm not sure it's a bad thing. Is especially on the cow calf side, still should be some profitability, for the next couple of years. On the feed yard side, yes, feeder cattle are awful high. You look at some of those sale report prices, and you just wonder how well that pencils out at the end. But what you don't know is what do they have feed bought for, or cost of feed. Corn price relatively low currently, and that certainly supports some of the higher feeder cattle prices. So when that question's asked, my traditional line of thought has been we're not going to change the biology of that animal too much, right? If I add a heifer to my herd today, she's going to spend, till next spring till I breed her, 4 or 5 months, 6 months. She's going to spend 9 months in gestation, right? And that calf's going to be born in another 15 months until that calf produces a pound of beef, right? So, kind of conventional wisdom tells me this cattle market should be pretty good, if not steady, for the next 2 years. Certainly, there are those things that can derail a cattle market, right? We're watching what's happened at the southern border with screwworm and those type of things. What happens when we open the border open? the Mexican feeder cattle coming back across. What impact does that have on feeder cattle prices or beef prices in general? And then keeping track of the cow herd numbers. We've been calling cows really going back to since it's been dry out in the western states, 2021 or so, calling cows at a pretty good rate. That January 1 cow report will tell us how many cows that we've called in 2025 and give us an idea as to what farmers and ranchers are thinking going forward into 2026.
Garth Ruff, beef cattle and livestock marketing field specialist for Ohio State University's Extension. Garth, thanks again so much for joining our podcast.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Craig Pullman from CAP Farms here in southeast Van Wert County. I always call it a small to mid-size family farm cash grain operation. I'm the one here full-time. I've got a neighbor hired part-time, and my dad's still around here, I would say 6 or 7 months of the year. Otherwise, he's down snowbirding in Florida. The health benefits plan through Ohio Farm Bureau, I've priced that several different times through the years. And just the last year, my wife and I made the decision to sign up for it. We were struggling to get quite the coverage we wanted exactly through her work, which is how we've been getting our health insurance for a few years, a handful of years here. And so we priced it again, and it was really priced competitively. Was actually the same price point as her work insurance, and that was with her getting a subsidy from her work side. So was really pleased to see that.
Learn more about the Ohio Farm Bureau Health Benefits Plan at ofbhealthbenefitsplan.org.
As a leading farm insurer, Nationwide has a strong commitment to protecting farm families and all the unique needs for their individual farms and businesses. Recently, to add to that commitment, Nationwide has announced their renowned focus on cattle operations of all sizes. Joining us today is Pete Lemaire, Director of Farm Underwriting at Nationwide, to chat about this focus and paint a better picture of all Nationwide has to offer. Thanks for joining the podcast, Pete.
Thanks for having me.
So, Pete, if you could start, can you just start sharing more about this renewed focus of cattle farms?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thanks for having me, Ryan. I really appreciate the time today and the ability to talk about what Nationwide's doing in the cattle space. So many of you probably know we're an organization that has deep roots in the agricultural community, founded by farmers, and definitely still very connected within the farming world. So we oftentimes take a look at what the ag economy is doing and what the overall landscape of the farm market looks like. And what we found out is that there's a need for more specialized focus products and coverages within the cattle world. And that applies countrywide and of operations of all sizes. So you see folks that have smaller hobby herds and then folks that are engaged in full-scale ranching as their main operation there. And we realized that there needs to be an emphasis on those, both from a products and coverages standpoint, and then also from an underwriting expertise and insurance and risk management standpoint as well.
Started to dive into a little bit, but can you just tell us what kind of insurance does Nationwide Agribusiness provide for farmers, and why do you think it's so important that farm business owners find the right plan for their farm?
Yeah, absolutely. So we provide all sorts of customizable coverages. Our base farm policy combines multiple coverages into one. So it can cover your dwelling, your outbuildings, your farm liability, business auto, things like that. So everything you find within your farming operation, Nationwide has a product for. And we want to make sure that we're providing kind of a robust suite of coverages depending on what that operation looks like. As we all know, there's many different revenue streams within a farm, a lot of different ways of meeting the needs of their community and providing those products. So we're here to make sure that we're providing the right coverage for that operation.
So when it comes to the farm business insurance or the livestock insurance, what all is covered for livestock farmers with a plan like this?
So in conjunction with that base policy and the other endorsements, we're able to provide, within the cattle world specifically, we're able to provide coverage for the livestock themselves for broad causes of loss. So that would be fire, lightning, wind, things like that. One of the other interesting things that we see is we provide coverage for unfounded animal cruelty lawsuits. We provide defense costs for that, which is something that folks are definitely concerned about within the livestock industry. And then in conjunction with that, more of a livestock specific endorsement that we have is called the Livestock Elite endorsement. So what that does is adds on even more coverages for things that folks in the livestock and cattle industry would be interested in and would be applicable to their operations. So that can include theft of livestock tack theft, things like that, livestock in transit, refrigerated farm personal property, really just kind of specific coverages for that operation that folks may find are things that they're interested in insuring and find that there's some risk there. Right now, we're also rolling out new marketing tools and product enhancements to that livestock elite form to make it even more robust and to help our agents better serve their clients. So really the biggest thing is making sure that our farmers and producers have the peace of mind that they need when they're running their operation, the protection they need to keep those operations running smoothly.
Now, as you mentioned, along with being on almost all Nationwide materials, is that Nationwide covers farms of all sizes. Can you kind of speak to that commitment that Nationwide has towards our small and medium sized farms?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, deeply rooted within agriculture, we serve operations countrywide of all shapes and sizes. So, our commitment to small and medium sized farms is very strong. They're over 85% of the agricultural community. We view it not just as a market segment that we're able to serve, but a vital part of the overall agricultural and rural communities for sure. So, it's deeply embedded in our coverage packages. Like I said, we're able to tailor our coverages for the right amount of protection that that farm needs and wants, and have specifically designed products to meet those new and emerging needs of those farmers. Um, Oftentimes, we find that these are potentially underinsured if they're with a different carrier. It may be on a homeowner's policy that's trying to operate as a farm policy, which gets a little bit tough. So there could be potential coverage gaps. Nationwide, for many, many years here, has had a commitment and a focus towards the small and medium sized farmer to make sure that they have the right coverages for their operation so that there aren't those gaps there, and that they're able to continue with that peace of mind and stability that they need to go run their operation smoothly.
Well, besides covering farms of all sizes, it sounds like Nationwide has a lot of different options for coverage as well. So, what should our listeners do if they want to learn more, or if they're looking to get coverage?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say reach out to your Nationwide agent. They can walk you through these coverages, and can make sure that they're reviewing your operation. We work with a great group of agencies that are definitely professionals and experts within their field. They can help you tailor a policy that fits your operation the best. If you don't have a local agent, you can go to farmagentfinder.com. That's farmagentfinder.com. Um, they can connect you with a farm certified agent to be able to get connected in with Nationwide, the products that we provide here. And there's more tools and information coming out soon to support our members even further.
Pete Lemaire, Director of Farm Staff Underwriting at Nationwide Agribusiness. Thanks for joining us, Pete.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Sometimes out here, you have to speak loudly.
Our voice alone may not have as much impact as we would like, but my voice
can be heard and influential through membership in Ohio Farm Bureau.
My voice, along with tens of thousands of Ohioans,
makes a difference when it comes to legislation, regulation, or litigation that can be positive or potentially harmful to those of us in the agriculture community.
Become a member today at ohiofarmbureau.org.
Because there is strength and members.
Welcome back to the Ohio Farm Bureau podcast. With nearly record low crop prices, ever increasing input costs, trade disputes, a labor crisis, and the need for a new farm bill, farmers are facing a lot of challenges right now. That is also why, as the voice of agriculture, Farm Bureau is so focused on ensuring the stories of members and American agriculture is front and center. To give us a better picture of how this happens and how Farm Bureau stands as the voice of agriculture, we're joined by Bailey Cornwine, Communications Manager for American Farm Bureau. Bailey, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ryan. I'm excited to be here to talk about what's going on in farm country.
Absolutely. So, Bailey, can you start off by just kind of sharing an overview of your role and how it plays into the greater mission of Farm Bureau?
Sure. So I am the communications manager here at the American Farm Bureau Federation. I've been in this role for about 5 years, and it kind of started as a focus on traditional media. So that's your print media, TV, radio, and now podcasts in this day and age. And along the way, I've picked up a few other things. So I manage our Newsline radio show, and then I also am the communications manager for Farm State of Mind, our mental health initiative.
Now, you mentioned some of those traditional media outlets and usage. As the voice of agriculture, how does Farm Bureau utilize traditional media to tell the story of farmers and ranchers?
Sure. So we do this in a lot of ways, and it really starts with our what we call in-house products. So those are the things that you're going to find on the Farm Bureau website, fb.org. Products like Newsline, like I mentioned, which is our twice a week radio show. And then we also have our Focus on Agriculture column, which is kind of like our opinion pieces that's written by members, by farmers and ranchers. And then we have Farm Bureau News, which is our kind of column, our feature column that talks about the work that's going on around the country by county farm bureaus, by state farm bureaus, even sometimes at the AFBF level. And then, of course, we have the Zipline, President Duval's column, where he shares about the issues that are most important to him. So that's how we get our story out proactively. But then I do a lot of work on what's called earned media. So that is when reporters come to us to talk about the issues that they're hearing about or that they have questions about. And a lot of times we will put our members in front of the media. So they want to come to us to hear directly from farmers and ranchers. And that's kind of where I come in to help them make sure that they are putting their best foot forward. So things like media training, practice interviews, to make sure that they have their message ready to tell the story of agriculture really to the world, because when you're talking to that reporter, you're talking to that reporter's audience. So we want them to be as prepared as possible. And then one of the ways that we do that is our Thanksgiving survey, which I think we can talk about a little bit later, but that's coming up starting November 1st is when the data collection starts. And then that's actually our biggest media story of the year, believe it or not, even though it might seem like something that's kind of only tangentially relevant to agriculture. The media are really interested in it, and we use that as a vehicle to talk about some of our most important messages of the year.
Awesome. I want to ask a little bit about some of that earned media and then definitely get a little bit deeper into the Thanksgiving survey and some other opportunities. But starting off, I'm sure you hear from a lot of different journalists and ag groups, both in DC and across farm country. Can you speak to what are some of the current trends or the common questions right now?
Sure, you hit on it a little bit in your intro. There's a lot happening in farm country. There are a lot of issues that farmers are concerned about. And when farmers are concerned about an issue, we're seeing increasingly the media is concerned about that issue. More and more consumers want to know where their food is coming from, how that food is grown. And so when consumers are interested in something, just kind of the general public, the media becomes interested in that because they want to answer those questions that people have, right? And so they're coming to us to get that information. Some of the things that they're coming to us about are, like you mentioned, farm labor. What's happening with the people who are harvesting our crops or planting our crops, particularly in the specialty crop world, our fruits and vegetables. They're coming to us for information about animal health issues, such as highly pathogenic avian influenza. Around this time, HPI ticks up. It's a cold weather disease. And so we might see an increase in egg prices like we did at the beginning of this year. And that caused a lot of interest from the media. But I think the number one story that kind of ties everything in together is the farm economy. Like you mentioned, this is a really difficult time in farm country, and farmers and ranchers are really struggling. So the media want to know why this is happening, why farmers are struggling, what are some of the factors that play into this, and they want to know how consumers can support farmers and ranchers. What can they do to help? And then they also, of course, want to know if there are any sort of government solutions that can get farmers through this tough time to just make it to the next crop, or if there's anything like, for example, a new farm bill that can help farmers and ranchers in the long term. So I think the farm economy is a perfect example of how everything kind of comes back together. Of course, we know at Farm Bureau that most stories can be tied back to farmers and ranchers, but this is a perfect example of how you have things like struggles with farm labor, struggles on the trade front, all coming together to like really create this perfect storm of a difficult farm economy.
I think a perfect storm is a good analogy for what's going on right now. There's always something to talk about. And like you said, it goes back to how are our farmers and our ranchers feeling day to day, whether it's on the labor front, whether it's on, the trade and market front, but all in all, what farm economy is looking like. Going back to some of the proactive approaches, what are some of the other major opportunities for Farm Bureau to get its message out there?
Sure. So I think, like I said, it kind of starts with our products that we're putting out. We're trying to highlight the issues that are important to us with things like our newsline or even news releases that we just write. Or our economists have an awesome series called Market Intel, where they're doing analysis. It's kind of meant to be easily digestible for everyone from lawmakers and legislators to farmers and ranchers themselves to help them make decisions about their farm. So we use both of those as really strong tools to put our message out there. And then if media members have questions about what that information is or just want to go deeper on that story, they come to us and we can answer those questions for them. But then there's also opportunities that we put out to the media that say, hey, if you want to know about this, we would love to talk about it. And one example of that is, like we mentioned, the Thanksgiving survey. We have done this survey every year since 1986. So it is a beloved tradition in Farm Bureau. And more than that, it has really become an opportunity for the media who wouldn't have any other access or exposure to Farm Bureau, or even really farmers and ranchers, to learn more about why food costs are the way they are, what's driving those costs, and the role farmers play in growing our food. So over the last several years, we've used both the Thanksgiving survey and the one that we do in the summer cookout survey, as a vehicle for Farm Bureau messages. So of course, we're talking about the cost of your Thanksgiving turkey, we're talking about the cost of your summer cookout, but we're also talking about the struggling farm economy. We're talking about the need for a new farm bill. We're talking about the labor that picks your specialty crops like your sweet potatoes that are the sides on your Thanksgiving table. So on a surface level, it seems like something that's just for fun, that's just for tradition, but when you dig in a little bit deeper, you realize that it's an awesome opportunity to get our message out in front of literally millions of people. So it's awesome. I would love to have your members help. The survey opens on November 1st for the data collection. It's fb.org/turkey survey. They can go out into their hometown grocery stores or even just shop online. In this day and age, it's really easy to get that price data without leaving the comfort of your home. You can do it right from your cell phone if you like. And entering that data, the more surveys that we have, the more reliable our data becomes. And then it becomes more trusted for the media who's already interested in this story. They just want to know that it's good numbers that they have to talk about. So fb.org/turkey survey on November 1st. Help us out.
Absolutely. I'll make sure to have that linked in our website post. Also, you talked about how great of an opportunity it is. And I think it's a great opportunity too when we're meeting with family and friends and loved ones around the Thanksgiving table, right? Because they start talking about, hey, this price of turkey is a little bit higher, or the side's a little bit higher, or hey, this is lower this year. And what a great opportunity to just advocate for agriculture, even just at the table of like, yeah, let me talk about why that is. Let me talk about the farm economy and what farmers are going through these past couple of years, or why this is better or why this is worse. So what a great chance and a really fun tradition for Farm Bureau members, but also agriculture to see what time has done to some of these products, and just a way to look back and look forward. Now, last thing, Bailey, and I know you already mentioned it, but just one more time for our listeners, where can members find out more information about American Farm Bureau, along with the many communications and policy products you all craft?
Sure. So our website is fb.org, F like farm, B.bureau, fb.org, and then that's where you'll find Newsline, Focus on Agriculture, the Zipline, all of those products, market intel. Definitely subscribe if you're not already. It's some great information there. But then also social media. We're on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, just Farm Bureau across all platforms. And that's kind of where you see the more fun side, I would say, of Farm Bureau, particularly on TikTok and Instagram. A lot of great reels and videos featuring our members, telling their story, and can also be a great example for any of your members listening. If they're interested in telling their story, they can kind of see how the members on our page do it, and then they can try it out for themselves.
A lot of fantastic resources for our members and anyone who's interested in learning more about American agriculture. Bailey Corwine, Communications Manager for American Farm Bureau. Bailey, thanks again so much for joining us.
Thanks, Ryan.
Find previous podcasts at ohiofarmbureau.org and search podcasts.